Okay, so hey guys, welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Holloway versus Topuria fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Topuria is 15-0 with 5 KOs and 8 submissions, and Holloway is 26-7 with 12 KOs and 2 submissions. This fight is for the UFC featherweight title and for the UFC BMF title. Holloway's last fight was a win via KO in round 5 versus Gaethje, and Topuria's last fight was a win via KO in round 2 versus Volkanovski. Topuria is 27 and Holloway is 32. Holloway's UFC losses have come versus Poirier in 2012 and 2019, Bermudez in 2013, McGregor in 2013, and Volkanovski in 2019, 2020, and 2022. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I said, this is for the I believe both the BMF and the featherweight title. If I'm not mistaken, it might not be. It might just be for the featherweight title, in which Topuria currently holds. They are both got a lot of hype about them, both of these fighters. I am very excited for this whole card, to be honest, and for this whole event. I think it is an excellent event with some great fights on it, with the likes of some fights which I'm not even going to speak about, but I just thought I might as well give a mention here. I think Murphy versus Ige is going to be an interesting fight. I think Ige gained a lot of credit from his fight versus Lopez when he came in on stupidly short notice and put on a very game display. Ankalaev versus Rakic, obviously it's got very big implications, this fight, because if Ankalaev is able to get through Rakic, then he's probably going to get the Pereira fight, and that pretty much is a big money fight in the UFC currently if you're able to fight him, and everybody's kind of saying, why isn't Ankalaev fighting Pereira already? So like I say, if he's able to get through Rakic, and if he isn't underestimating Rakic, then I believe he can go on to fight then Pereira. Magomedov versus Petrosian, I think that is a great fight. I think Magomedov is a very entertaining striker, and he brings a lot, and on his feet is very good. Hasn't had to really deal with a wrestler yet, but isn't dealing with realistically one in Petrosian. So I think it's going to make for another very good fight where Magomedov is able to show his creative striking. And Neal versus Dos Anjos, which is again a very good fight in which two guys who has never been able to beat the top of the top, but have always kind of fought around. I mean, Dos Anjos has fought pretty much every big name from lightweight to welterweight. I think he even had like a 1 or 2 fights at middleweight. He moved around a lot and has fought a lot of guys and has been in the UFC for a long time. But same as Neal's fought quite a few of the top guys as well now, and has come up short at quite a few times. But nonetheless, I think it is a great fight to be made. And like I say, speaking about the main event as a fight, no, neither of these fighters are going to want to go to the ground. It's probably quite an obvious thing to say that neither of these two are going to want to go to the ground. So I don't think this boring thing in which people have been saying, the kind of style in which Dvalishvili has and Muhammad has, a lot of people have been saying that that's classed as boring for a champion, and it's not what the people are wanting to see, and the refs should stand them up and things like that. We're not going to have this with this fight. I suppose that's why perhaps there is that more hype about it, because there isn't really that kind of conversation about that. I mean, like I say, they're both coming off really high caliber knockout wins where they both looked, destructive when they were able to do that, and everybody's got Holloway on their side. Holloway has everybody on his side. I mean, and is really coming off such a high because of what he did versus Gaethje, and it probably was one of the best knockouts ever in the UFC. I mean, I watched it so many times on repeat over and over again because of just how good it was and how entertaining it was, and just everything about it. The fact that he didn't care about anything other than the fans' entertainment when he was doing that, even though he was winning. You've got to give him credit for that, and like I say, that's definitely got the fans on his side. And obviously, there's and it kind of made the UFC 300. There was other big highlights, of course, the Alex Pereira knockout as well. But in general, that was probably the biggest highlight from UFC 300. And to do that, you really have to be able to be the biggest name on the UFC 300 card, where everybody's going to be so hyped up. Every fight's going to be so hyped up, really wanting to put on a great performance, really wanting to put on a show. to be able to be said that you are the person who probably created the best moments from UFC 300 is a great thing to say. And in general, Holloway is talked about as being the best featherweight ever. I mean, if he is to beat Topuria, then perhaps that argument can come back into play. I mean, realistically, he's been the best at the rest for a little while now, and other than, of course, what happened with Volkanovski, the fact he was never able to beat him in the three occasions that he tried, the first couple fights were close, and then, of course, the last one was a bit more of a convincing victory for Volkanovski. But other than that, he's been the best of the rest. You've seen that with quite a few different fighters where they're just not able to beat the champion, and they just kind of have to settle for being, like I said, this best of the rest and just hope that newcomers keep coming, because that gives him new opportunities and things like that. And I think it was a really great opportunity for him to fight Gaethje. I think perhaps he looked better at lightweight. Perhaps he was getting hurt a little bit more. I think Gaethje definitely stumbled him a bit, hurt him a bit, even rocked him a bit. But he looked like he was able to make the weight a lot better. And something about Holloway, it seems like he's not really that comfortable making featherweight anymore, even though, like I say, he's perhaps talked about as being one of the best featherweights ever. I don't think he makes featherweight that nicely anymore. He looks very kind of zombie-like at the moment. When I've seen a couple of the interviews in which he's done in the build-up for this fight, he's looked very drained, especially this week so far. I think I saw one and it looked like he was very weak and he looked very drained. And you see that a lot with fighters and they're still able to rehydrate and be successful, but like I say, it's not a good look. And if Topuria is able to capitalize upon that and see this as a vulnerability, I mean, he's younger, he's more natural for the weight probably, and he looks strong for the weight, and is coming off, like I said, his own big stoppage win as well, and has got a lot of momentum behind him, and has got, of course, all the Spanish fans behind him as well. So, he's got a lot to go in his favour as well. And if he sees that kind of as a weakness in Holloway's game, he might, with the power in which he possesses, might be able to hurt Holloway. And like I say, Gaethje was able to hurt him on a few occasions. So perhaps Topuria, like I say, who's a natural featherweight, might be able to do that. And I would say perhaps he has that more similar style to that of a Volkanovski compared to the recent fighters in which Holloway has fought. I mean, obviously he fought and he couldn't beat Volkanovski. He was that kind of small, compact striker who was powerful in his own right, had very good kicks, and was able to kind of slow Holloway down and wasn't really drawn into perhaps the same kind of exchanges. And I think there's a lot of that in which you do see in Topuria. It would have been really interesting to see if Volkanovski in his prime was able to, fight and beat Topuria in his Topuria right now. So that would have been a really interesting thing to see, because, like I say, I think there are very similar attributes between the two of them, and Holloway came unstuck against Volkanovski, of course, and so perhaps you could see the same being happened again. Perhaps he's changed his style since then and has done things to tweak that, and he knows how to deal with that now because of his experience, in which he does have. Perhaps he's coming into his own kind of second prime now. We'll have to wait and see. And Topuria is creating a bit of a name for himself now. He's had an interesting back and forth with McGregor, where I think he was threatening him to show up in the BKFC in Spain, and I don't necessarily know what was gonna happen, but I don't think anything did end up happening. And so he's put on the radar of a few more fighters and fans, because he has been involved with McGregor, and there's been a little bit of a back and forth, and so that creates more of an interest for this fight as well. And like I say, it's a great fight, and Holloway, of course, he's seemingly been around forever. Like I say, he's got bucket loads of experience, but he's only realistically 32. He's not old at all. He has been in the UFC since 2012, so 12 years, but he's not old at all, and he's still able to compete around, as shown, the top guys. And Topuria, who is this kind of young gun coming through, hasn't got the same level of experience and isn't that much younger than Holloway. So, it's going to be interesting to see if age is catching up to Holloway, if the fights, the wars in which he's been in are catching up or not. But like I say, we'll have to wait and see. Also on this card though, like I say, I've spoken about some of the big fights on it. There was also meant to be Pavlovich versus Garn 2, which would have been a fight in which I'm excited for, but I believe that's been pushed back a little bit. And so, also on this card there is a fight which also has been pushed back a bit, and that's Whittaker versus Chimaev, and I think that's a great fight, to be completely honest. I think it's created a lot of hype in itself, and both fighters are on a good run at the moment. I mean, Whittaker is coming off a war of a fight versus Costa, where he was able to show some real good boxing skill, and then also a great stoppage victory versus Alaskarov, where he didn't realistically have to take the fight versus Alaskarov, but by doing it, it shows that he'll fight anyone. Similar to like what he's done versus Chimaev, he didn't really have to take the fight versus Chimaev. It's not a ranked opponent in the middleweight division. It's a fighter who is not gonna realistically respect you, to be honest. I mean, he hasn't really respected the whole organisation, to be honest. I mean, the amount of times he's kind of pulled out now already, or not made weight and not really cared and things like that. So he's, a risky fight to take in general, and of course he's still on a great run of form. Obviously, when he first came into the UFC and kind of first created a name in the UFC, he was seen as such a killer. Perhaps in recent contests, he's been shown, not up, but has been shown as a little bit less than maybe what we thought. Maybe he's still got a bit of developing still to do, and I think he is improving still with each fight. But that Kamaru Usman fight was an interesting one. Obviously, it was only a 3-rounder, and Chimaev had a lot of success in the first round because he was able to take him down to the ground and pretty much hold him there from the get-go, and Chimaev is a very fast starter. But into the third round, Usman was having a lot of success on the feet and was able to box very well versus Chimaev. So with this being a co-main 5-rounder, which is something in which a lot of fans have been calling out for a long time, it's nice to see, not a world title fight being a 5-rounder co-main, and I feel like fights like these definitely should be that level. Whittaker is a lot more used to going that 5-round distance than Chimaev. I think that Chimaev is going to win via submission in round 2. I think he's just going to be able to do it. I think he's going to be able to get him down early, hold him down early, and I don't think Whittaker's wrestling game, his scrambles aren't bad, I don't believe, but I don't think his wrestling game in general is anything too crazy, and if he is being outwilled, and if the fight is at such a high pace, I think he could deal with the high pace, but I just don't necessarily know if he can deal with Chimaev basically just being on him, and then I think he might give up a submission, and Chimaev will probably take that, in my opinion, even though Chimaev has been out for a little while now, and he's not, like I say, been fighting actively, and he's not kind of been around as much as what he once was, and this is of course a new weight for him as well, so we'll have to wait and see. But like I say, I think it will be an early submission win for Chimaev, which is a big statement win for him, and if he's wanting to stick around in the middleweight division, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to get automatically a title shot, because it seems like they're trying to make Duplessis versus Strickland, so I don't necessarily know what happens for Chimaev if he wins this fight, to be honest, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see. But going back to the main event, so Topuria, as a fighter, of course, he walks you down. He was doing that consistently in the fight versus Volkanovski, and even the fight versus Emmett as well, which is, to be honest, a great performance from him. I think that's a fight in which a lot of people haven't really talked about how good of a performance that was. That was a completely shutout win for himself, and really helped progress him quickly, because before that he fought, I believe, Bryce Mitchell, and that was kind of at the bottom kind of 15 rankings in the featherweight division, and then there was him versus Paddy Pimblett having a bit of a back and forth and things like that, and you were thinking, who's this guy, where's he kind of come from, what's going on, and then he has that fight versus Emmett, and I think that pushed him so much. It was a great performance, and then of course during this time Volkanovski had the 2 fights versus Makhachev, took the Makhachev fight, the second one on short notice, then was knocked out, but then was eager to still return back to the featherweight division and see what was still available, see what was around, see what new names were around, and was basically waiting for new names for a while. That's basically probably why he moved up to fight Makhachev in the first place. But then Topuria was his new name, and it was a risky fight to take in general, and Volkanovski took it, of course, lost. But yeah, like I say, he's somebody who's really progressed well and has really kind of become in the limelight quite quickly. But yeah, sorry to carry on about what I was saying about him as a fighter. Of course, like I say, he walks you down. He's got a very good compact guard. He doesn't respect any type of opponents realistically. I think he's disciplined, but I don't think he respects the power in which you have too much. He's a front foot type fighter. He waits for his time to strike, and he's definitely clinical when he does so. He's a strong striker. I mean, when you look at his resume, you know, he's not got loads of knockouts really, but since coming into the UFC, he's had 2 of his fights go to a decision, and then the rest of them be stoppages, I believe KO stoppages. So his 5 knockouts have come in very kind of short succession. He's not been in the UFC for a crazy amount of time, so yeah, it's come in quite short succession, and he's definitely a strong striker. Has fast hands, combination puncher. Topuria, I mean Holloway has got fast hands as well, and is a combination puncher. So I definitely think it's going to be interesting to see how he manages it. And I believe there is quite a big, I don't know the exact stat, but quite a big reach difference between the 2 of them. So that definitely could play a factor as well, because Topuria is somebody who is able to find his range well and is able to be just outside of range for when you're striking. But Holloway is going to create a whole different type of thing with that. He's a good in-close type fighter, Topuria. He's perhaps, if he does get in that kind of exchange in which Holloway puts Gaethje in the end of their fight, perhaps Topuria might be stronger in that aspect and be able to have more success in that. He's got solid head movement, and I think, like I say, his discipline and his ability to kind of hit and not get hit is very impressive. He works off angles very well. He's got very good timing, good feints, and he reacts to shots, counters very well. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't take kicks excellently. I don't necessarily think Holloway takes kicks that well. I think if Topuria is able to utilise his kicks on Holloway, he can have a lot of success from there. But like I said, I don't think Topuria takes them too well. I think he does lunge in sometimes with shots, and then perhaps by doing that, you're putting your head as the main kind of target. He's perhaps exiting exchanges is sometimes a bit of a problem. Like I say, he's an in and out type fighter. Sometimes exiting exchanges can be a problem, but like I say, Holloway might be able to capitalise with his reach on that. Committing to his counters, I don't think he always does that. He can sometimes jump out of range and then isn't able to counter himself. He can perhaps force the fight a little bit at times. I don't think that happens too much because, like I say, he's quite a disciplined fighter, but occasionally you can see him try and force the fight and be held or be drawn into a bit of a fight. And if he gets drawn into a fight versus Holloway, then I really don't think that's what he's going to be wanting to be doing. If he's held at a mid-range, if Holloway is able to utilise a jab or utilise these rangy strikes in which he will have, if he can hold him at a mid-range, and if Topuria is made to miss, then I think Topuria is not too sure what to do if he's made to miss. He perhaps might be overconfident coming into this one. Perhaps he waits too long sometimes for shots, and Holloway is definitely not somebody to fight at another opponent's tempo. But he backs up in straight lines, and Holloway can be quite rushing in the attack sometimes that he does have. So if he catches Topuria backing up in straight lines, he can have success there. And he can, like I say, sometimes be drawn into a fight a bit later on in the fight. So perhaps, you never know, we might see a similar type of moment if it does get to round 5 between the 2 of them. To speak about Holloway as a fighter, he's aggressive in his own right, and of course he's going to be very fired up going into this one. Absolutely, who would not be after what he just achieved in the last fight? He's agile. I think he is agile in his work, and he's able to utilise his movement well and does move well and does have solid head movement and attributes like that. He's a rangy striker with solid combinations. Striking variation is excellent. I think he has better striking variation than that of Topuria, and in general is able to utilise and move fast enough to be able to utilise the striking variation in which he has. And I mean, I think he broke Gaethje's nose at the end of, I think it was the first round, from a spinning back kick, which he utilised with just great speed as well. He's loose, he's relaxed, he can fight on the front foot or the back foot, and I think Topuria hasn't really been tested too much on the back foot yet, so he's going to want to be on the front foot, and Holloway probably is going to accept the back foot. But yes, sometimes, like I say, he does come rushing in, so he might put Topuria on the back foot at some points. He can pick his shots well, he can be just out of range himself well, he changes levels well, plants his feet well when he wants to go for these bigger strikes. He's got very good hand speed, and of course he has that experience. So he definitely has faced somebody, like I say, similar to that of Topuria, probably a few fighters similar to that of Topuria, striking wise, and has able to have success. Not always, but has able to have success at certain points in his career. But you know, Topuria is going to have to show something perhaps maybe a little bit different to what he has seen before. Negatives about him, I think, like I say, the obvious thing is the fact that he does take a necessary risk. He really didn't need to do that versus Gaethje. Of course, from a fan's perspective, it's entertainment. It's UFC 300. You want to see these highlight reel moments, and for himself, there was that knockout bonus as well. So he wanted to be doing that, but it's an unnecessary risk, defensive wise. Creates a lack of control on his side. Does it need to happen? No, but you're not going to stop, and you're not going to ask him to not do that as a fan. So it's a negative, but it's positive for a fan's perspective. His accuracy can sometimes be off when he's picking his shots, which he does sometimes do. His accuracy is excellent, but it can drop at times. He squares up. I think he has minimal defensive cover, quite a weak guard, and Topuria, who is, like I say, probably going to have certain bits of success in close if he's able to get in close with the strong striking in which he has, is probably going to be able to see how weak of a guard in which Holloway does have. Like I say, he does rush forward, and sometimes, that could be a bad thing if Topuria, with the power in which he has, is able to catch him with a shot. He can have his chin in the air. Like I say, he can really be hurt by leg kicks and slowed down by leg kicks, and that's what Volkanovski did so well. And Topuria has the ability to do that as well. He has quite wide overhands, and like I say, has quite a weak guard. Topuria is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Topuria will win via TKO in round 3. Perhaps this is a bit of a bold shout. As a fan's perspective, I would love to see Holloway win, and I'm not rooting against him at all. I'm not rooting against Topuria either, but I just think with the striking ability in which he has, like I say, with the discipline in which he has and can show, if he's able to show that, if he's able to find some sort of range that works for him, even if he can get in close, if he gets in close, I think he'll have the better of the exchanges. Holloway might be the more creative with the strikes and perhaps might have certain amounts of success from there, but if Topuria is able, like I say, to slow down Holloway with the leg kicks and the power in which he possesses, I think he can hurt him. And Holloway, like I mentioned, got hurt in that last fight versus Gaethje. Gaethje just wasn't able to capitalise on that enough, and I think Topuria will be able to. And I think it'd be a statement victory is if he's able to beat Holloway by decision. And of course, Holloway making the weight cut again back down to featherweight is probably going to be draining him quite a lot, and that could affect his chin as well. And so I just think there's certain things like that are just going to mean that Topuria is going to win via TKO in round 3. And I think he's a very good fighter who can go the 5-round distance and has very calculated attacks. And then who he could go on to fight, of course Volkanovski again could be an option. Volkanovski, I don't necessarily know what's happening with him now. Obviously he's coming off back-to-back stoppage defeats, and things could have been different if he didn't take the Makhachev fight, but he's making the skits, which I'm enjoying watching, and that I find them funny. But is he? He's warranted the rematch basically just off his achievements in the featherweight division alone, which is, of course, they're great achievements. But is he going to get it? I don't know. When you've got the likes of Diego Lopez, who's a very entertaining fighter, who's a very entertaining striker, also coming up in the featherweight division, do you feel like you'd kind of rather have that for a fan's perspective, or Volkanovski, who is, like I say, coming off back-to-back bad stoppage defeats? So I'm not too sure what will happen. Or Topuria has talked about moving up to lightweight. Do I want to see him, just win the belt, defend it once, and then move up? No. I would love to see him fight Diego Lopez. I think realistically, in my opinion, that probably is the fight to be made. I love Volkanovski, but that probably is the fight to be made, Diego Lopez. And then perhaps if Holloway's still able to make the featherweight division, or if Volkanovski wants to move back up to the lightweight division, we could see Holloway versus Volkanovski again. I wouldn't mind that. But like I say, Lopez versus Makhachev. Makhachev versus Sarukian is a fight, of course, for the lightweight title. So, if Topuria is wanting to move up and Makhachev is willing to give him that opportunity, you never know. But Makhachev perhaps might want to move up to welterweight. I think Bilal Muhammad said he won't fight him, so Bilal is also thinking about moving up as well. It's quite a bit of a messy thing with everybody moving up in weight and wanting to go for that kind of champ status. I'm not really a massive fan of it fully, because I do think that you have to fully just wipe out your whole division before you can even consider moving up, and that's why I'm liking how Pereira isn't really wanting to be in a rush to move up. He wants to beat everybody, and I believe he probably will fight Ankalaev next. Topuria, I believe, should fight Diego Lopez, then perhaps then can consider moving up in weight. Makachev, I think perhaps he's at a point where he is warranted to move up in weight, but Bilal Muhammad definitely shouldn't move up in weight yet, because they just haven't fought with the top contenders. So, like I say, I would like to see that. Topuria versus Lopez next, if of course he does beat Holloway. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.